Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Lowdown. Today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the one and only Mr. Guillem. Guillem, big warm welcome to the show.
Hello, Connor. How are you?
All good, all good. Been down in Miami here the last few days at Soccer X. Of course, we caught up last night at the regatta, Coconut Grove, I believe. Very different from the Whites of Toronto.
I don't know, you tell me, because I've never been to Toronto, but it certainly was a spectacular place. I didn't see much of it because it was dark, but yeah, it was good to see old people. Soccer X is about that, isn't it? A meeting place of people that you may only see when Soccer X is on.
Yeah, of course, and you know, I was joking with Matt and yourself. I suppose off air, unfortunately, we haven't been blessed with the Miami sunshine as of yet. We have to say, back in Ireland, you know, the only difference between winter and summer is the warmth of the rain. So I'm delighted to be here anyways.
And yes, let me see, it's windy at the moment, it's grey, it's raining, but we won't tell that when we ring back home.
No, that's why the cameras are faced this way today. But anyways, as we begin with every guest that comes on the show, Guillem, could you please take us through your earliest football memory?
Wow. I think I was, my parents for Christmas bought me a ball. I must have been 3 or 4. There's a picture of it, perhaps that's why I remember it. And we didn't have a back garden because it was like cemented, but it was perfect to play football. So I will be kicking the ball there for hours. I'm with my dad, who was a amateur player in a local district in Barcelona, and that will be it. Just the idea that you know, the excitement of playing with a new ball, which I think often after 2 or 3 days of it you get bored and then you move into something else. I didn't stay in football. Football has never been for me my biggest passion. I've never been in love with football. It's just a way of telling stories. That's what I did. So yeah, after 3 days, I'll go into the other gifts that I was given for Christmas. Ball stayed with me for about 3 days. I didn't do the 10,000 hours. That's why I never became a player, obviously.
Really?
No, 10,000 is what you need, isn't it?
Hear and give. But tell us, I mean, you speak about storytelling there. Obviously, an awful lot of people listening to this podcast, they would have become familiar with you through your, I suppose, how synonymous you are with English footballing folklore, with Revista de la Liga and whatnot. Take us through those early days going from Spain to the UK.
So I had a clear idea from the beginning that I needed to get out of my comfort zone, of my surroundings, that I had to learn English. This was really a big target. Didn't know where that was going to take me, but I knew that would allow me to open my world. So, you know, the Erasmus grant that gets given in the European Union for kids to travel all over Europe. I got one friend of mine, or somebody from the UK, who got one of those grants, came to Barcelona, stayed in my place. We became very close, Alistair, and when I was finished university around that time, I said I would like to go to England. He said, well, come over and stay with me. He lived in Liverpool. What I wasn't aware is how difficult the accent in Liverpool is, and I think it was going to be 3 times more difficult to learn English there. I remember the trip from the airport to this guy's house. I was going to stay with his family for about 3 months, and his dad is from Scotland, strong accent, and he's a Scouser. So I thought the year and a half that I'd done of English before I came to England have meant nothing. My teachers were terrible, not realizing that actually if you're going to learn English and you're going to do it with a Scottish man and a Scouser, it was going to be doubly difficult. But I couldn't have been more welcomed by the Liverpool people. I sensed that there was a connection. I think, you know, Catholics like we are, sense of community, family, looking after those that don't have so much. And I always tell the stories of spending, after doing 3 or 4 hours learning of English in the morning, then I will go to the pub and, you know, get myself a pint, and that pint will be drying in 7 hours. And meanwhile, people realized that I didn't have a lot of money at the time, and you know, the butcher will bring a bit of a steak, and yeah, you can take this home. Or somebody would have done a scouse, you know, stew, and be like, look, there's a bit for you here. And straight away I felt like home. So that was something that always helps. And I've had very present when, for instance, at the club I'm the chairman of, Biggleswade United, we invited Spanish coaches to come over. We made sure that they always were welcome and they never felt they were abandoned at any point. Because that's what Liverpool did for me. And 3 months I was going to stay there, and a year and a half after arriving, Alistair said to me, I thought you were going to be here for 3 months. So I got the gist of it and decided to look for an apartment and live in England, because at that point, I could have gone back home, like many did. All the students that were like, I cannot handle the weather, I cannot handle this or that. I never looked around and thought, this is not what my life should be like, or I prefer whatever I left home. There was none of that. I just went day by day and I enjoyed it. Got to know more people, started developing my career as a journalist, never as a football journalist. That came by pure accident. And one thing led to another. I fell in love, I stayed there, got friends, and then that was 10 years in Liverpool until I was able to move down south where more things were happening.
And it's interesting because what could be mistaken for a soft landing, I suppose, at the start with the wholeness and the familyness of the community of Liverpool, it was those 3 months, in fact a year and a half, where I would say you would have learned an awful lot of soft skills, took on a lot of traits and characteristics that would have served you in your 30, 40 plus years in the broadcasting industry.
No doubt. You learn from everywhere, there's no doubt about that. But the first thing is, once you come out of what you know and you have to adapt, if you don't adapt, you go back home. That means you're not able to adapt, to see what comes in front of you and to beat it. I was able to, naturally. It didn't feel like a hardship at all. Looking back, thinking, where would that come from? And then I realized my mother is an immigrant and so is my dad. They as a teenagers, just before they were 20, they got to know each other and got married in Barcelona, but my dad is from the south of Catalonia and my mother left home in the south of Spain, in Andalusia, when she was 13.
Wow.
So there is a sense that where wherever you are, you just have to make the most out of. And that I had that from my parents. And once in Liverpool, helped by that cushion that I sensed around me, you learn a lot of things. Like, obviously, I didn't have enough English to start a conversation, to even be part of a conversation. I will be surrounded by people, and they will be talking at the pace that people talk, and I will lose the track of what they were talking about while I was trying to come out with a sentence that makes sense at that point in the conversation, which of course it had moved on. So I learned to look like I knew what I was hearing, and I learned to say yes. And if anybody looked at me and says, "What do you mean yes?" I would say no, and just try to get it right, accommodate myself into my surroundings. But as I said, I never felt that as a difficulty, or even a challenge, or even an adventure. I had in my mind that I had to learn English. That was the place to do it. And meanwhile, it was like, let's see what I can do with what I've got around me.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier on the art of storytelling. And I think broadcasting certainly gives that. But the fact of those circumstances, life would have given you so many reps, to bring to mind the man in the arena quote. I just want to link that back to football. You said you were in football, left it, went to live your life, go back into football broadcasting. What brought you back in?
There was something that happened as well just before I went to Liverpool, which was 1991. As a kid in Barcelona, you tend to be a Barcelona fan. That's it. It's a given. My dad was an Espanyol fan, though, so that generally, it could be either way, that you become an Espanyol fan or that you rebel against your dad. In my case, I stayed as a Barcelona fan until one day there was on the radio, in Spain, radio is a big thing and radio is always on. And there was a game where Espanyol beat Barcelona like 7-1 or 7-2, something like that. So as a kid, I thought, Espanyol is better, so I'm going to become an Espanyol fan now. That happened to be a friendly in which Barcelona played like the B team or something like that, but never mind, that changed my careers. And then, course, which became a careers, because I went to Leverkusen. We played the UEFA Cup final, and that was a 24-hour bus trip to Leverkusen. It was a UEFA Cup final. It was home and away. We beat Leverkusen 3-0. Okay. I can see your face, so you probably know what happens here. So we beat them 3-0. We'd beaten AC Milan, Inter Milan, the big AC Milan, Inter Milan of the 80s. And 3-0. Go to Leverkusen, arrive early, had a couple of beers, and people were saying, "You're going to win. This is done deal." And by the way, nobody is a Leverkusen fan. You know, they give us this season ticket. They buy a factory. We don't care about the team. So good luck to you. And it was 0-0 at halftime. And then we conceded 3 goals in the second half. Extra time, we couldn't bring our 2 best players because our wise manager decided to leave them out of the squad altogether. That was Valverde, who's now our manager, of course, and Lauritsen. They were out. Remember every feat of the game. So stop me here, move me on, because otherwise we'll stay in this game. Because it was relevant to the story we're telling. So we lost our penalties. And something that was ours was taken away. And that really hurt. It hurt to see the players, my heroes, crying. It hurt to see all the people crying. This was the first time that we had an option to win something in 60 years. And it didn't happen. So the return back was, going back with the bus, another 20 very long hours. We did not wear the shirts that said champions of UEFA Cup. And the cake that said champions, we just put, like in Spanish, champions, runners up means sub-champions. You only have to use your finger to put S-U-B. So we did that. And I did not want to know anything about football after that. Didn't want to just was not interested. I went to England. It was difficult at the time, this is 91, to actually know the results. I will ring home once a week on a Wednesday. First or second question would be, what did Espanyol do? But I didn't care. And when I did, because I wasn't that emotionally attached to football, I thought, which is the team that wins here? Liverpool. All right, I'll become a Liverpool fan. And then they stopped winning. But football was never... Before that, especially after that, I'm trying to perhaps link it to that moment. After that, football never became an obsession, or I didn't want to be a sports journalist, a football journalist. It was not part of my plan.
But it's amazing how football can evoke emotions in the individual, and how you, as be it a player, as a coach, a broadcaster, journalist, have a responsibility to kind of evoke that emotion in others.
And yes, there's nothing like it. There is nothing like it. Some of having said we're jumping from really not being obsessed about football to then becoming the chairman of a football club. Yeah. I've been part of Because of United since 2014 and chairman 2019. The defeats and the victories, it's like you don't get any other feeling like that. So you have to be careful that doesn't become everything.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and sorry to interrupt, Guillem, because, obviously in your esteemed broadcasting career, World Cup finals, Champions League finals, some ecstatic moments and some big games and players. Was being part of Biggleswade United like the last straw for you in terms of what more can I get out of this game from an emotional point of view?
I didn't do it like that. Big games, yes. I mean, that UEFA Cup final was big in a negative way, but we won 2 cups after that with Espanyol when it wasn't expected. We won the European Championships in 2008, and it's like, what? Spain was never ever going to win anything. And then we win the World Cup, and I was there, and I knew the players, and then we win the European Championships again. And then being close to the Liverpool people, and we win the Champions League in such a way in Istanbul, and I write a book through it. So there has been all these highs, and mostly because I knew the people involved, not so much because of the result or the performance, but I knew the people that that made those things happen. I knew the goalkeeper coach that had told the goalkeeper of Liverpool how the penalties were going to be taken. So because I knew all that, it just made it closer to my heart. But when you actually have got the opportunity to start a project, it doesn't matter how big or small, and you lead the way, and you've got an idea of how we should play, and we've got an idea what type of coaches and what type of players we should have, and all that gets reflected onto the pitch, and then you win or lose. There's nothing like it. That was, professionally, a lot of big stories I could tell you, but personally, the biggest emotions I've ever felt on a pitch were with Biggleswade United, for sure.
It's quite crazy, and you see the Biggleswade United jersey over my right shoulder, and it's obviously in your dual role, right, as broadcaster and what you do at Biggleswade. Over the years, have you become more empathetic to people employed professionally in football?
It's a good way to put it. I wanted to understand why they took the decisions they took. So I got coaching badges. So I'm UFAB, and obviously I tried to coach but didn't have the time. And I didn't even have the clothes. I went to Hitchintown, invited me for a coaching session, and I went with like a coat that you shouldn't take for a coaching session. I think they looked at me. I thought, what?
Give us the image. Go on.
So it's like a puffy thing that goes over your head and big, like fashion. Like if it was a fashion or long coat that you will wear on a night out in Iceland, you know.
Sounds like a gothic Noel Gallagher parka.
So, yeah, that kind of thing. It was that kind of thing. And then looking back, I'm thinking, of course, I don't belong there. So don't try to be what you're not. You got your coaching badges, great. But perhaps, yes, it would be a good idea to have a foot on the other side. And as it happens, and timing in life is everything. I got an email, like many emails that you get, you know, from a lot of people in different walks of life. One of them was from the chairman of Biggleswade United at the time saying, we hear you talk about football, you think you know, prove it. So I met him almost immediately in the market square in Hitchin, where I used to live, in the Starbucks, and came up with a plan of what I wanted to do with the club. And he was like, yeah, go ahead. Didn't ask how many people were at the club, how many teams, didn't ask anything. And really, we had 5 or 6 volunteers at the time, 2 teams that trained once a week, and you know, that there were like many other teams in the area, Step 5, historic Step 5, so 9th division, then, you know, they hadn't been down for a long while. And I came in with like, you know, so many ideas of a way of playing, building from the back, with coaches, Spanish coaches coming over, and invited 2 of them. Others came with an academy, blah, blah, blah. And it was through the years that you realize the limit of that ambition. There's no pitches in England. Clubs run for volunteers. You depend on the volunteers, on their energy. And now we've got almost like 300 people involved for the club, and that's fantastic. I would like to take it even further, but you have to go at the pace that you're able to. But yes, you're absolutely right. All those things allow me to walk into a changing room and understand what was going on, talk to the coaches at their level, but talk as a chairman when I had to. First director of football, then chairman. Talk to the fans, understand what the media, ours and outsiders need, and all that you can then apply to, I would say, different things. To the books, when I'm writing about coaching or leading, I know what I'm talking about because I'm in my own little way, I'm putting it in practice. Coaches see me as one of them. Unai Emery calls me a manager's journalist because I am interested much more about what the managers have to say than what the players have to say, and all that has meant that the conversation is quite equal. I don't go to interview people as much as I go to meet them for dinner, and they're happy to join me for it because they think somehow that they're also going to get something out of it. It's not just then gifting away, but and that comes on the back of all those experiences. Yeah,
but you are the sum of all your experiences, and that allows you to be authentic. Once you're authentic, no matter who you're in front of, you become equally relatable. And it was interesting, I bring it back to last night, I don't know if I should be bringing it up when we were at the bar, but you know, it's funny how the tables have flipped, because I've asked that question, what is your earliest football memory? Probably 150 times now at this stage, Guillem, and for the first time ever, the tables are flipped on me. Because I have to say, one of the very first football memories I have was, I told you this last night, sitting down together as a family, watching you do the La Liga Sky Sports show on a Sunday evening. To be there with my toasted sandwiches, an 8-9-year-old kid, just watching all these different, like, exotic Spanish names, and it was just so far removed at the time from the English and Irish football you'd be accustomed to. It was so exotic. But the second part I have to that was Revista de la Liga. Don't know if you remember. It was on a Tuesday night.
Of course I remember, yes.
It was on UK time, 5:30, 6 p.m. It used to always clash with the dinner slot in our house in the west of Ireland. I just had such an affinity at the time for this Valencia away jersey. It was like blue at the top here. It was like yellow and red stripes. I used to go outside pretending I was Marco Di Vaio, a 7-8-year-old kid, full jet black hair, thinking I'm this bald-headed Italian striker. Be shouting Di Vaio, kicking the ball at the garage door. The mother's coming outside screaming, "Hey, Connor, get that back into the house." So it's...
Let me say, through the years, I've heard many stories about those things and how important Spanish football was to people, and the fact that they all watched it. Never ever has been explained like this to me, I'm telling you. And I can picture the family sitting around a television to watch what I thought it was interesting to them, because it's different. What I didn't realize at the time, but I wanted to do, was to actually give it context, 3 dimensions, tell stories, tell who these people are. And yes, the exoticism of all of it, I did not realize, or never been told to me in the way you explained it, what an impact it had. I understand a lot, because I still go around and people want autographs and want to tell photographs and want to tell me the story of that story or similar stories, and what an impact it had, Spanish football. And it is what you say, because it was so different to everything else that you knew, but it was so well explained. I think we did a really good job on doing that, and opened up the world. We opened the window to Spanish football and Spanish culture, but it opened up a world for many like you, who and many other coaches who actually have been fascinated by football through Pep Guardiola, through that Valencia, for instance, and have wanted to be part of it, either by going to Spain or learning through coaching. But they wanted to put in practice that coaching that had impressed them, and in some cases obsessed them when they were kids. So it's amazing. It's amazing that all those things happen through television and through football.
It's crazy, and I remember as well how your fandom kind of comes into play, because I think I told you this too. I'm a huge Chelsea fan, but anyways, sorry. But you know what? It was everything back in the day, because you had no Twitter. The Sky Sports Transfer Centre wasn't really there. I remember vividly the January of 2004. Chelsea were so close to signing Joaquin, and I was just like, you don't know what this guy is going to be. Absolutely incredible. I was watching him doing Elasticos for Betis at the time. Little do I know, like, up until last season, he's still playing for the club. 2011, the same noise around Kun Aguero going to Chelsea. But then, transfers aside, you have obviously Pep Guardiola's Barcelona intertwining with the rivalry between Guardiola and Mourinho. And at a time where football was capped, especially like if you're like in Ireland and you can get free Champions League on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's just like, look, we can't get enough of this. I want to watch more La Liga now. I want to see this budding rivalry now. And so you're just living vicariously through these people for the weekend. I remember, like, it was just and the expectation alone.
As you say, as there wasn't Twitter, not so much information about foreign football in the newspapers, the only source of information you had at the time was either me breaking stories about transfers, because Sky Sports News wouldn't be interested hardly about anything else at the time, so it was transfers only. Or obviously the Saturday and the Sunday games, and I would always make sure that, as well as analysing the game, we had a good guest on one hand, and also that would tell stories related to the week or to the teams. And Revista de la Liga. Revista was an idea I had, which is very closely, it's very similar to the radio shows that in Spain take place at midnight. Radio, as I said, a big medium. And at midnight is the biggest shows, and it's football-related shows. And there's a little bit of interviews, analysis, all kinds of analysis, technical, tactical, but you've got, the personalized conversations with some of the stars, all that. I thought, we should do that. And let me take you back to the moment where I entered Sky and how I eventually became Revista, just very quickly. So I had done my years in Liverpool and was doing any journalist that pay me. I was doing, writing about Lady Di, as we call her, Diana and Camilla and Prince Charles, and about cinema and cultural stuff and whatever paid. And then in '96, just before the European Championships in England, one of these top radio shows came to London must have been for the draw of the European Championships, and all the journalists came with them. So it was a big show. The massive show in Spain was done in London, and my brother said, "Should we go?" Oh God, I don't know. Well, yeah, okay, let's go. And I went, and the editor of a magazine called Don Balón was there, who was a friend of mine, was at university with me. And I said, "Have you got a correspondent in the UK?" "No." "Do you want me to do it?" "Yeah, okay, let's do it." So that's 95, 96. And then I started seeing that Sky was doing Spanish football. So I rang the producer. Now, this is how I remember it. I spoke to the producer recently. I said, it was not like that. I said, well, don't tell me the truth, because this is how I remember it, and I'm sticking to it. So I rang him, Dave Lawrence, and I said, you doing Spanish football on Sky? Yeah. I'd write for Don Balón, which is a football magazine. Can I tell the story of what you do? And, oh yeah, come and see us. So I went to the studios in Osterley, and with clothes that were not mine, because I didn't have proper clothes to wear, long hair, big glasses, and he said, right, this is the gallery, this is what we do, this is the sound, this is the director, whatever, this is where the pictures got mixed, this is coming up, this is the studio, presenter David Bobbin, and you sit here next to him, shows to start in half an hour, and you're going to be our guest this week. And he said, you've done this before? So, hundreds of times. And that was my debut in television. I'd never ever done it. And at halftime, he came over and said, look, we're thinking of doing a highlight show. Do you want to do it? And I said, I thought of for like a quarter of a second. I said, yeah, I'll do it. And that was it. We called it First Spanish Football. Used to have 2 hours. It was you would probably weren't born. 2 hours long. Editings of games of 15 minutes, and I will be telling stories to David Bobbin, not to you, not to the audience, not to the guy behind the camera, to David, who did not want to be there. David Bobbin, rest in peace, he did not want to do that job. It was given to him by Sky. It's like, I'll do it. He was getting on, he was veteran. So my job was to convince him, to attract him to Spanish football, to actually, every show was a little bit of a show for David Bobbin. He loved it at the end. He absolutely loved it. And little by little, we started doing more things. And when David Beckham arrived in 2003, the bosses said, we're going to do a package hour show. Let's find it a name. I thought Revista de la Liga sounded Spanish enough, but people will know what it was, a bit of a magazine. And we started doing that. And a lot of things came out in that show. But that was the only source of information you would have had on Spanish football.
Absolutely incredible. But like we spoke about this again last night, it's the fact that it had so much artistic flavour in it. You could tell like the likes of yourself, the likes of a Jerry Armstrong were actually contributing to the show, that there was ideas from your end and it was pretty much bottom up. To have such autonomy, do you think we'd ever have a football program like that ever again? Could that be replicated even?
No, it cannot be replicated, and for many reasons. One, we were lucky. I mean, I can tell the story now because I'm not on Sky, and I will never be in Sky again. But basically, Sky did not care much about us, which was a good thing. It was like, do your thing, and so we tried things. Little by little, I started to come to talk to them. Like, we need to bring interviews. We need to bring people that are big in Spain and speak English to the shows. So they let us eventually, and it became a bit of a cult show because we talked about players that were coming through, so coaches were watching it. That cultural thing that kids like, the whopper moment with the skillful pictures. There was all that, and Sky were like, yeah, just keep doing it. There was no need to make it look like anything else that was on Sky, and that helped the program immensely.
Just purely authentic, and it's amazing the pop-ups I'm having. Ian Hart moving to Levante in 2004. Yes. I remember that cultural piece where I believe you went out and interviewed him, in fact.
Yeah, well, at that point we were big for everyone.
Yeah.
For the audience, but for those players that were going there, they want their story to be told properly. So in 2003, David Beckham goes to Real Madrid, and I was close to him already because I was trying to find out what was going on. He was very helpful, and I get to know his family. Parents were separated at the time, but his mom said, "You look after my David." And I realized, one of the many times in which I realized there's a personal story to every headline. So this big guy is going to this big club and it's a big story, but his mom wants his kid being looked after. I love that. So I was supposed to do that, to actually look after David. Or one of the many that did, because of course you don't have the language, you go to a new country and a new club like that, where I see all the Netflix documentaries and I see how well they all talk about David now, the former Real Madrid players. And I think, you're all two-faced. Yeah. You did not want him there. You weren't happy that he came. You thought that he was just a mannequin. You thought he was somebody who only cared about fashion. That's what you told me. I heard you say all this. I won't tell you who they were, but David actually conquered them. So that had to be told. And I will be going to training, and we could see them train, and we could talk to them after training, and he very humbly passed me his number. He's a compulsive text messaging person, and we spoke a lot. One occasion, my back was killing me, and he's like, "Oh, our fish is really good. Just come and get it." Says, "David, you cannot ask a journalist to actually go inside the changing room to be treated by the physio. Come on." So I even had to tell him the rules. But we went out with him and Victoria, and I understood a lot of what he was going through. But then eventually I said, right, we need to sit down and talk and do an interview, which we did. Revista La Liga was a 1 hour show at the time. And remember Dave Lawrence still producing the show. We go to Madrid, like here, 3 cameras and sound man and everything else, and we are in a Spanish restaurant that they serve you the food, first the starters, like the prawns and the ham, and we ask for wine, and then comes the meat, and then comes the fish, and we had all of that. Eventually Victoria joins us or whatever, and so we were going on, and at the end of it, I thought, this is gold, right? This is gold. What I used to do is spend 3 days every week in Spain, do an interview like that with other people, and that will go into Revista, be like 3 minutes. So they will get a sentence from here, a sentence from there. It was 3 minutes for the show, 5 minutes maximum. There was no podcast, there was no social media, there was nothing. 3 minutes. The rest will be thrown away. And I thought, I've been an hour and a half with David Beckham, relaxing here. Both of us a little bit pissed because the wine was really good and it went down very well. And I thought, Dave, this has to be an hour show. No, we'll do 5 minutes. What do you mean 5 minutes? Maybe 10 minutes, maybe one part. No, this has to be a special David Beckham. So eventually it became a special David Beckham, which he's very happy about because, again, it was just a guy. At that point, it was just a guy, not David Beckham that we all knew, just making a life in another country. That went on, and I met him a couple of weeks ago, and somebody filmed it. I think one of the crews of CBS, one of the cameramen filmed it. I didn't realize we were being filmed. The look in his eyes is of, "Hi mate, how are you?" And like a friend, and I feel the same towards him. It was a big hug. We've seen through the years anyway, but every time we see, it's like, yeah, there was a time where we looked after each other, and I'll always be grateful, and I hope his mom is as well.
Don't doubt that, and it's very, very rare nowadays, to the best of my knowledge, to have such a relationship between a journalist and a global superstar as such, where you are in fact treated as the close confidant. So it's not a responsibility to be taken lightly either.
No, but if you do it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, is because whatever it is, the unwritten rules that I use for these relationships are the right ones.
Yeah.
And I think it has to do with, you use 2% of what you know, but it's enough, and it's the kind of stuff that helps, not that kills people. There is the feeling, as I said earlier, that I'm a different type of, I don't know, communicator. I try to tell another story, not just the headline story, another story, and at the end, just imagine yourself. I mean, you of course are in football, so imagine yourself actually being in La Liga or in the Premier League, and everything you do is talked about. It's in the papers, it's in radio. People that you never met and never gonna meet are talking to you about that. Wouldn't you want somebody to actually develop a relationship with that person and get the story told properly? And that's what's happened with so many through the years, with Rafa, with Pochettino, with David Beckham, with so on and so forth. Finally with Leo Messi as well.
It's absolutely crazy. I was just going to mention, like, you've been there for Beckham the player, Beckham the superstar, Beckham the owner.
Yeah.
And speaking of synchronicities, with the great man to your left hand side, the latest project being the latest edition on the career of Lionel Messi, which, like, Messi and Beckham coming together like a tour de force here in the magic city that is Miami. I mean, Guillem, you would have had a first row seat to that transfer more than anyone else too.
Well, I broke the news of him joining Inter. I wouldn't say by accident. Those things don't happen by accident. But it's funny how it happened, as we're talking about anecdotes and stories, because obviously I had been told the whole real story about Barcelona, the fake interest, you can call it that, and the fact that Leo wasn't falling for it, while everybody else was reporting that he's about to join Barcelona almost. The Saudi Arabia interest as well. But of course that at some point Inter were almost there. The end of May, according to Jorge Mas, the co-owner of Inter Miami, at the end of May he wasn't sure if Leo was going to say yes. Because Jorge, Messi's dad, had actually put everything in place everywhere for him to actually decide where he was going to go, which is a difference to his time at PSG, because he did not have much of a choice there. And I think when you go to a place that you kind of, not forced, but certainly that you haven't thought about it properly, you don't enjoy it as much as, coming to Inter Miami, and you can see how happy he is. So all those things were happening. I knew the background, I knew the story. I was preparing the updated book, and then that message that allows you to go publicly with it arrived while I was playing pool, and I was losing, and my friend smokes, so I said, "Would you just go out for a cigarette, please? I need to sort this out." And I just put a tweet out, and then I call him back so we can keep playing pool, and I won, so I was happy with that. That was the biggest part that happened that day, and yes, then it obviously became huge, and everybody picked on it, and but as you say, it was what a mix of superstars. But as today Xavi Asensi, one of the directors of Inter Miami, was saying, that the stars aligned, a year earlier or 2 years later wouldn't have happened. But at that point, it did happen, and I think everybody's very happy with that.
Yeah, exactly. And look, for me, it's a case of, you look at the age of Lionel Messi now, and what an esteemed career. I mean, for me, the greatest to ever play the game. But you'd expect at his age to be slowing down, if anything at all. Things have been speeding up since the 2021 Copa America win, Barcelona exit, PSG, the ongoings at PSG, the World Cup win, the PSG exits, Inter Miami, it just doesn't seem to be slowing down at all, Guillem.
Yeah, but if you will recognize this as a coach, there are players where you don't have to tell them anything. They come out into the training session and they're ready, and they finish the training session having given everything. You know those players. When are you going to tell that player, right, slow down now, or go slower now, or don't go so hard? You can't. So in the case of Messi, he who during the years had to identify where his body was and how far he could take it. There was a time when he had to, as a kid, had to stop drinking Coca-Cola and eating pizzas. And then he got to a point where he had to go to a nutritionist in Italy when he was in his mid-20s because he had injuries. And then he realized that he had to do a little bit more gym. So all those things mean that he knows his body perfectly well. And now he's in a place where he can actually push himself to a limit, and that, trains very, very well because he knows that how you train is how you play. But obviously on a game, needs the right conditions for his talent to shine. And when you have that talent, you better create those conditions. Argentina have done it with a whole squad that look at him in awe. That's important because they do the extra mile for him and they win for him, and they let him lead. That had not happened with Argentina before. And now with Inter Miami, you've got a team that is surrounded by friends. Luis Suarez. Oh, sorry, he hasn't arrived yet.
You can't be revealing that, Guillem.
Sorry. Well, there you go. That's your exclusive for the show. With obviously Alba, with Sergio Busquets. So with David, who they've been in touch with, and I was trying to think the other day. I think I actually arranged something that David asked me to do, that Leo had to do, and then kind of I put them together. It just came to me. But they've been in touch for a while, in the way that football players are in touch, maybe now through Instagram a little bit more. And yeah, he's surrounded by good people. The context is being developed at Inter Miami. I think everybody's shocked by what he means and what he is and what he brings.
Yeah.
The MLS, Apple TV, Adidas even, and certainly Inter Miami and the media around Inter Miami. Everybody's shocked. I think he's also trying to come to terms with, he was in elite football in Europe, and now he's at a different brand of football with a stadium that is not theirs and a bunch of things. But slowing down, maybe not, but certainly now he's going to push his body to actually get the team to win. He's going to do that.
It's incredible too. I visited the Inter Miami campus August 2022, and going back there yesterday, which is November 2023, it's insane to see the change in the space of a year of what one individual can have, the domino effect on a club. And in fact, at the GIS course yesterday up in Fort Lauderdale, the sporting director Chris Henderson, in fact, he acknowledged that with the oncoming of Messi, that the goalkeeping coach of Inter Miami received a very stern phone call from Mr. Messi the morning of his first game at 7 a.m. asking him why hadn't the goalkeeping report been done for him. He was there at 7 a.m. drinking mate, and it's interesting the effect one individual can have. It's like the coming of the Beatles. I mean, at Soccerex today, was every second or third word not about the great man himself?
Yeah, absolutely. And you get it obviously with Messi. I don't want to compare him to Cristiano, but Cristiano has got the same effect. Doing the biography of Cristiano, many of the coaches at Manchester United were saying, not Sir Alex, because he didn't dedicate himself to coaching, but the coaches that he brought, it'll be like, we run out of exercises. We run out of things to do. And there wasn't the internet that will give you all this, or YouTube will give you all these options. So Cristiano will just pass by where the coaches were, always doors open, of course, and he will shout, "Tomorrow more, eh? That was a bit rubbish today," which will be like, come on, Cristiano. But everybody won on their toes, and coaches have been telling me until 1 or 2 or 3 in the morning, just making sure that what was going to happen the next day was going to be top, because you're talking about pure elite, and it made everybody better. But multiply that commercially and media-wise by I don't know 10 or 100 or something. I mean, with Messi winning the World Cup and coming to Miami, we're talking about something that I don't think anybody was prepared for.
No, and again, kind of looking off the field, which I'm very, very interested about. I think you've been at the heart of the movement that's sought to humanise the man, instead of the footballer. And what the depiction that's come out the last few years is he's a real family man. He cares so much about his wife and sons, but also at the heart of it too is a real intimate soul. And reading the book today, which I received kindly from William, reading the last chapter, it's amazing how much he puts his soul on the line. And I cast you back to the night before Argentina Mexico, that 6-hour mate chat with Rodrigo de Paul.
Yeah,
absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, and how they change each other's mind, because he goes down, he goes low, he doubts like everybody else does, of course. But that is what De Paul and others did in those moments. No, come on, let's go, come on, up. And that's why everybody's grateful that they had that surrounding and that group and that energy being created, where nobody was allowed to get away, nobody was isolated, nobody was inside a negative thought for too long. And sometimes it happened to Spain in 2010 as well. At the feet, just gets everybody, makes everybody feel closer. And in terms of his personality, so I presented about 8 events, commercial events with him, and since he was 22 or 23, and I could see the difficulties at the time of communicating. And he will be really relaxed with kids, around kids in the green room. This is where you actually are before you come in on stage. But how hard it was for him to actually having to speak in front of public and the microphone to be very, very, very close to his lips, because he will just be very quiet. To now, Ballon d'Or, where he was just in total command of the stage. He was happy to be there. He was just prepared a little bit, but his speech, he wasn't reading it. So there's been a big advancement on it. And parallel to that, I think he has felt comfortable opening up a little bit. And I remember when he came to Paris, he gave a bunch of 5-6 minutes interviews to some of the media there, chosen media in China and Japan and Spain, and I was one of the privileged ones to do it for the BBC. And I thought, I'm not going to ask him about why this happened and his tears leaving Barcelona. I'm not going to ask him about, meeting Neymar and Mbappe. So I started with how are you kids, basically? How they taking it? I mean, because you just arrived from Barcelona, and that type of conversation, I think, may have surprised many, because I think he forgot that we were filming that, and as a consequence, as you say, it's allowed for people to realize that behind the GOAT, or whatever you want to call him, the winner, the serial winner, you've got a person with his own limitations and doubts and everything else.
Incredible. And if he didn't do enough, I suppose, to win the affection and adoration of many Argentinians with the 2021 Copa America win, it was interesting because I liken the last World Cup to that of the Bronco and the Bobo. Bronco being a famous Argentinian trait we'll speak on, Bobo being poor Wout Weghorst. But anyways, we'll begin with the Bronco. Again, you look at players like Dibu Martinez, Christian Romero, Lisandro Martinez, you see this fury in them, you see this proper Argentinian passion and pride. I was so surprised to see this emanating from Messi. I was just saying, this guy has turned the table. And you know what? I would say him showing this, wouldn't say nasty, but perhaps a little bit dark side last winter in Qatar, don't know if you agree, even endeared him more, not only to the Argentinian public, but the world, in terms of just, this guy will do whatever it takes to help his country win this World Cup.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last time that he will react to things that happen on a pitch, especially, you know what it's like when you come out of the pitch. But there were cameras there. He kind of didn't mind that there were, because that's what he wanted to do at that time, and he wasn't playing to the camera at all. Yes, we all have a side that that we try to keep under wraps. But as I said, when the heart is going 100 miles an hour, this could come out. But it was also the consequence, as I explain in the book, of the atmosphere that he had around, of the group that was formed, that was kids from the streets of Buenos Aires, it feels like, or Rosario, that allowed their essence, their way of being, to reflect on everything that happened on the pitch. We know Argentinians are clever on a pitch. We know that they maximize their potential, and they play with the edge of the rules. Not just Argentinians, Latins. That's what we do, on the pitch and off the pitch. If we can get away with not paying taxes, we will do that. And these are heroes. That's how Latins think. It's wrong, but that's how we think. And they've got all that. They've got the cleverness. They've got the cheekiness. They've got the rules have not been written for us, and the confidence to actually go onto the pitch and thinking we can beat anybody. All that gets reflected in that moment when Leo basically says, what are you looking at? What are you looking at to the Dutch player, and uses the word bobo, which is like idiot. But the word bobo is only used by kids. So it's like the Rosario kid that at 13 you left Barcelona is the one that you're listening to at that point. Is the kid. Because you're surrounded by kids like that as well, who talk like that, who behave like that, who then, when they realize that Leo was upset about the player, these Argentinian footballers, teammates, surrounded him and kind of, like you would do in the street. So that is also why I feel the win was big, because it was the perfect leadership in the ideal group, under the perfect conditions, and with a manager that understood all that. The hardest thing in football is that everybody thinks the same way, and Argentina have been doing that for a long time. So that's why obviously they're favourites for the Copa America, and I think Leo will play another World Cup.
Really?
We'll see. I think so.
I mean,
No evidence of it at all. Zero evidence. But he feels so comfortable going back with Argentina. For as long as he can win games without running a lot, and he can do that for another 4 or 5 years, can he? Then we may see him still in another World Cup, maybe.
It's an interesting one to think about it, because, again, you could call it a bit of a coincidence, but since the part in Barcelona, for me, he never seemed to really settle into life in Paris with PSG. But any time he went home to Buenos Aires, and in fact Rosario, it seemed to give him something that he was missing. It seemed to be brief moments of respite that he was taking, and then...
Yeah, but it wasn't always. But little by little, especially with the arrival of Scaloni, so in the last 3 years or so, that's when it all clicked. Before that, there were different leaderships, there were different groups, different ways of thinking about what to do on the pitch, a lot of things that didn't allow Argentina to click. And basically, he will, in the last 2 or 3 years, he's been going back to Argentina with looking forward to it. And now that I've just done it from Barcelona to Miami, and I'm shattered because of the flight and the fact and the jet lag and everything else, I'm thinking, how do they do it? Because of course they go for a week and then they go back to their own, well, not so much now that it's Miami, but they go back to Europe and So in the Ballon d'Or, he actually arrived to Paris 8:30 in the morning, did the Ballon d'Or thing, flew at midnight, and was training the next day. So how did they do that? Obviously fit people, but yeah, there was all that, and you're absolutely right in that it helped that with Argentina he was enjoying himself, because he wasn't with PSG. He went to Paris with not much of a choice. Had to sort it all out in 3 days, and there was no other. We're talking beginning of August. Everybody's made their mind up about teams and etc. And it's Messi who's coming in. You have to create the conditions for Messi. So anyway, he went to Paris. Had to spend a month and a half in a hotel. I've been to the hotel, massive hotel, brilliant. The room was huge, but he's got 3 kids that don't stop, and he had to get into a van to go to training, and that's an hour. each way, and the weather wasn't great, and finding the house wasn't great. And then he got COVID, he got injured, he got COVID, bad COVID. It took him a while to recover, and all that meant that the first season was gone, and he hasn't peaked at all. And then change of manager, and again, different ways of thinking about the game. Neymar doing his move, Mbappe wanting everything to go around him, Leo trying to mix with all that. It just did not work. I think the manager that got the best out of the three of them, by taking a little bit of each one of them and creating a collective idea, more or less, was Pochettino. But wasn't given time to continue. At PSG, is either win the Champions League or disaster. And that means that you cannot build. They're thinking a little bit different about it. And I do genuinely believe, and I've asked this, that if Luis Enrique had arrived earlier, Leo would have considered staying at PSG because he thinks he still belongs to the top elite. But things, as a friend of mine says, things happen for a reason.
But too, the start and middle of Leo Messi's career, it wasn't smooth sailing, Guillem, but nonetheless it was infatuated with success. 2-3 years there is pretty much roller coaster, up, down, even the last season at Barcelona and the infamous Bayern Munich loss. But then it almost seems as though the guy, finished his superhero arc last December in Lusail. And to let you a little bit into the experience of a fan that was removed from it, Johnny, who's with you today in the Uber coming here, both him and me were in Toronto watching a semi-final against Croatia. There wasn't one sinner in that bar that day, Guillem, that wanted a Croatian victory at all. So much so I was flying home later that night back to Ireland for Christmas. In the airport cubicle, Messi chants breaking out. Absolutely nuts. I felt it as much watching the final with my father on the Sunday. It was just ominous. It was just like the only outcome. There wasn't anyone in world football that believed, apart from the French, that Le Bleu had a speck of chance of winning. What was it like in the stadium that day?
Well, let me say first that that was Leo in a final and hoping to win it was your story. Because you saw Leo coming through as a 17-year-old in the first team. You saw him succeeding. You saw him with Pep reaching heights that we'd never seen. It was your story. And you fell in love with football and you started your coaching career. And all this is parallel. And then, of course, this friend of yours that you see through the television called Leo Messi goes through hardship. By the way, the perfect story. You have to have conflict. You have to have difficulties to beat. And then, we're thinking this could be the last World Cup. This could be the last group stage that he's in. This could be the last quarterfinals. This could be the last final. And he wins it for you. So you won it. We all won it because we have been so close to him and we understand some of the difficulties that he's had, some of the things that he had to beat, some of the pressures that he has to deal with. So obviously we wanted him to win it because he was us winning it with him. He's the guy that made us fall in love with football. For people of your generation, he was the guy that made you not only fall in love with football, you wanted to replicate that somehow. You wanted to be part of that world. And for him to win it, and that way, it's just the perfect ending. You were saying that you read the last chapter.
I was in the Uber today, coming back to the apartment, reading the last chapter, and it's captivating, but it's like fiction. It's honestly too good to be true.
Yeah.
Knowing the journey up until this point.
Yeah. That's why I wouldn't want to update it anymore, because that's it. But if he is capable of going to another World Cup and win it, so I probably will have to update it again.
Yeah, there's plenty of milestones along the way, of course, with Inter Miami gunning for a maiden MLS title next season. The Copa America obviously going to be hosted here in North America, with Miami being a key city too for the 2026 World Cup. You've done such a brilliant job documenting the journey of Messi from shy boy to global superstar to the next incarnation of family man. But what's the next iteration of Lionel Messi?
The next thing for him, after football, more football,
ownership.
Well, I don't think he's that interested about it now, but David Beckham has done a very good job of, without being in the day-to-day of it, to direct operations in a way, or at least, to give it not just glamour, but give it content. So maybe he decides to do something like that. Certainly, he's got in his mind to be like director of football at Barcelona or something like that. And every time he says it, I'm thinking, you've got no idea what that implies. Because there's a lot of calls, there's a lot of trouble, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. What he wants to do really is to be the advisor of the chairman and to ring him and say, look, there's this player that's very good, you should get him. I think that's what he wants to do. But in any case, it'll be something related to football. He doesn't see football as, like many players when they retire, they're like, I had enough. And I know many of them, I couldn't tell you the percentage, but it's a big one. They don't want to play football anymore. They had enough. And every time they bend down or they're going to pick something from the floor or they wake up in the morning, they're in pain because of bloody football. Yes, it was their career, but they burned out. There's many of them. Not the case of Leo. I do say in the book that somebody will take the ball off him. But I was debating with that sentence because it's like, but they won't because he'll get it back. And of course, once he gets it back, you cannot get it off him because he'll dribble you. But, metaphorically, I was trying to say football will move on, top football. And then we will all feel orphans because even if he advises and does interviews or does documentaries or does his autobiography or whatever, we'll never see him kick a ball again. We won't travel anywhere to go and see Leo Messi kick a ball, and we will not see another Leo Messi in our lifetime. That's obvious.
Yeah, okay, you have to mark your words in that too. But I mean, turning the tables on you, Guillem. I mean, I think it's been a captivating story in terms of beginning as that kid that got the Christmas ball, got the football for Christmas, to moving to Liverpool as a student, to working your way into broadcasting, the early days of Revista. We speak of next iterations, but football nowadays and social media.
I go back to this idea that I don't love football. It's not my passion. So I see it from a little bit of distance.
Yeah.
It hurt me. There was a time where I was one of the early ones to have a web page. I was one of the early ones to go on Twitter, and at first Twitter was a place for communication, conversation, breaking news. I didn't have to do it because I could have just rang Sky Sports News for it. But what I always did is at the same time as I put it out on Twitter, Sky Sports News will know about it and will do a phone call on it. So it'll be similar time. Obviously, I saw the potential of Twitter and helped me improve my career because people knew what I was doing instead of me telling them every time I met them. And now in Soccer X, the amount of people that come over is like, oh, congratulations on your career, and I love what you're doing, or I keep watching you and whatever. And you're thinking, if it wasn't because of social media, people wouldn't know what I do.
If you mind me asking, what's that like? Because it's the woman in the red dress phenomenon. More people know you than you know them.
It's every time I get something like that, it's a clap in the back. It's like, well done. And who doesn't like a well done? It's that. And if I've influenced even 0.1% of anybody's life somehow, what a success that is. But yeah, you were talking about social media. So the first time I realized something had changed was when Fernando Torres goes to Chelsea, and I broke the news. And I was a scout. I'm an adopted Scouser. I lived there for 10 years. I love the club. Would be my English club if I didn't have Beagles or United. And everybody turned against me. Liverpool fans, death threats. You could get into direct messages. I think at the time I was getting all kinds of insults. And it's like, but I've just told your story. I've just told you what happened. Don't kill the messenger. And it took me a while to process what that came from, and that I shouldn't be affected by it. Took me 7-8 years, but now I'm in a position where I use Twitter or X to promote what I do, to put out stuff there. I still got 1 million followers or whatever. I still got an audience, so I use X more than the other way around. It used to be a lot of fun, but now it's a different thing.
So my question then is, and you spoke about the belief of not liking football. What sustains you What gives you joy from the game?
The possibility of telling stories is as simple as that. I mean, to be invited at Soccer X to talk about my book, it's like, wow, great, yeah, thank you. Or, when I used to tour with the books that Guillem organized for 5 years, it was fantastic. Go to Belfast, Birmingham, Dublin, Manchester. We had 800 people in Glasgow. It was just amazing. And the report that you get from people, stories that you were describing earlier. So there's all that I love. The possibility of working for the BBC regularly, having a podcast with them, or doing specials for them, or then go to Mikel Arteta and says, you and I have to sit down. People need to know you, and we will do that, because it's like, yeah, you're right, let's do that. So you use the fact that, as you say, everybody knows you in the game to tell stories, and that's the thing. So I've got 3 more books to come out, 4 more books. Yeah, 4.
Can you?
One is going to be in Spanish, captains of Barcelona, men and women, about leadership, about what it means to be a captain of a club like that. That will come out in April. I'm updating the Cristiano Ronaldo book. I've got 2 more that I cannot tell you about, because that's medium term, if you like. But contracts have been signed, so that's great. And I think that's where I'm heading. Just the possibility of, doing all these things, CBS, Champions League, travel around and telling stories in documentary shape or live television. Telling stories, that's the hook.
And for people that are that slightly bit inspired, which I know you've inspired countless people to pursue a career in broadcast and media, people that want to go down this route of combining storytelling with the emotionality that is inherent in football, what would be the one bit of key advice you'd have for them?
Be a storyteller first. So hone your talent, your skills. People are obsessed about doing the new revista or doing my job or being a sports journalist. No, a football journalist. No, an elite football journalist. No, a football journalist from La Liga. No, a football journalist from Barcelona. And it's like, just be a storyteller or a writer, whatever it is that you think is your talent, and then let the world tell you where. As Pochettino told me once in the book we did, it's like, throw things up in the air, and the universe will place you in those things in its place, and you will be also in a happy place if you do the work that it requires to get to where you want to get to. So just don't get obsessed about where you're heading. Just create a platform in which you can choose where you head.
I think storytelling really isn't befitting of you, Guillem. I think it's more of the alchemist that you are, Guillem Balaguer. I mean, this has been an absolute privilege of mine to sit down with yourself and go through your own career to date, and in fact go through the latest edition of a book I would have swallowed whole as a kid. So again, Guillem, I can't thank you enough for joining me today on the show.
Thank you for your empathy and the time you dedicated to prepare this, and the setup is amazing. So thank you very much for that too. Cheers, Conor.
Thanks, Guillem.